Emma is 7 years old. She has her mother's eyes and her father's stubbornness and an absolute inability to filter anything that comes into her head before it comes out of her mouth, which is one of the things I love most about her, and which is, as of last Tuesday, the reason I know everything I know. We were at the dinner table. I'd made pasta, the one with the sausage and the fennel that Emma had decided 6 months ago was her favorite, and that she requested with the frequency of someone who has found a thing and intends to hold on to it. She was eating and talking simultaneously, which she always does, telling me about something that had happened at school, and then she said it, casually, in the same tone she used to tell me about the school thing. Just slipped it in there like it was part of the same sentence. She said, "Mommy's friend Tyler has a dog. Can we get a dog?" I looked up from my plate. Holly was across the table, and I watched something move through her face in about a quarter of a second, there and gone, but I saw it. And then she said, very carefully, to Emma, "Honey, finish your pasta." And I looked at my wife, and she looked at me, and we had a full conversation without saying a word. And then Emma asked again about the dog, and the evening continued, and I got through the rest of it somehow. And after Emma was in bed, I sat at the kitchen table and waited for Holly to come downstairs. My name is Ben. I'm 38 years old. I'm a realtor, have been for 12 years, work with a mid-size agency here in Shreveport, Louisiana, mostly residential sales in the southern and western parts of the city. It's a profession that requires you to be genuinely good with people, to read rooms quickly, to understand what someone wants even when they're not saying it clearly, and to hold a lot of competing pieces of information in your head simultaneously. I am good at my job. I read people well. I did not read my own household well. I want to be honest about that. Her name is Holly. She's 35, works as the office manager for a dental practice on Uri Drive, has been there for 7 years, runs the front end of the office with the specific calm competence of someone who has been doing a complicated thing for long enough that it looks easy. She's the person that dentists lean on when something goes wrong because she almost always already knows what to do about it. It's a quality that comes through in everything. She's a fixer, a stabilizer, someone who manages multiple things at once without appearing to be managing anything. We met in 2020 at a fundraiser for a local school that a mutual acquaintance had dragged us both to separately. It was the kind of event where the food is mediocre and the speeches are long, and the only good outcome is if you happen to talk to the right person, and I happened to talk to Holly. She was funny in a dry way that took me a minute to calibrate to, and she was direct in the way that people are direct when they've been through something hard and have stopped seeing the value in being otherwise. The hard thing she'd been through was a marriage that ended badly when Emma was 2. Emma's father, his name is Chris, and he lives in Dallas and sees Emma 4 times a year on a schedule that everyone involved has agreed to, had been a whole separate story that I won't get into because it's not mine to tell. What I'll say is that when Holly and I got together, she was careful. Not cold, not closed off, just careful. She took her time. I respected that. I think I was patient in a way that she hadn't expected, and I think that patience was part of what built the trust between us. We dated for 14 months, got engaged in the spring of 2021, got married that October in a small outdoor ceremony at a venue on Cross Lake. 60 people, string lights over the water, Emma as the flower girl in a dress she'd been very opinionated about, which felt exactly right. We bought our house on Southern Avenue the following spring, a 3-bedroom craftsman with a screened back porch and a yard that's big enough for a dog, which Emma has been lobbying for since approximately the day we moved in. I adopted Emma. Or rather, I went through the process with Chris's agreement, which took longer than any of us wanted but which resulted, about a year ago, in a piece of paper that said what I'd already felt for 2 years, which is that she was mine as much as any person can be another person's. She calls me Dad. She has since about month 6, which was earlier than anyone expected, and which remains one of the 2 or 3 things in my life that I'd point to if someone asked me to identify the moments that mattered. My flaw, and Holly had mentioned this once, gently, in the way she mentioned difficult things, is that I work too much and I justify it to myself with the language of providing, of building something stable, of making sure our family has what it needs. Holly had said once, in the 2nd year of our marriage, that she sometimes felt like my job was more real to me than our home life, and I'd heard it, and I tried to do better, and I thought I had done better. The market in Shreveport had been strong for 2 years running, and I'd been deep in it, and I told myself the long hours were temporary and seasonal, and that Holly understood, and that everything was fine. I was wrong about what fine looked like from her side of it. The first thing I noticed was in June. Holly had mentioned a name, Tyler, in the context of reconnecting with some old friends she'd known before she'd moved away for a few years in her mid-20s. She'd grown up partly in Shreveport, moved to Baton Rouge for work, come back after Emma was born, and there were people from that original Shreveport chapter of her life that she'd lost touch with and was apparently finding again. Tyler Reeves was one of them, she said. He'd moved back to Shreveport after a stint working in Houston. She mentioned him in early June, just once, the way you mention a name when it's not freighted with anything. An old friend, Tyler, you don't know him, he's back in town. I said something like, oh yeah, and moved on and didn't think about it again. In July, she started having more evenings out. Not dramatically. She'd always had her own social life, her own friendships, time with her girlfriends that I'd always supported because I thought it was healthy and because I was frequently working late anyway, and the arrangement suited both of us. But the evenings became slightly more frequent in July, and she'd come home from them in a mood that I noticed without being able to name. Lighter than expected, more animated. The kind of mood that doesn't necessarily come from a girl's night, which is usually pleasant but involves a particular low-key energy, a tiredness that's satisfying rather than elevated. I noticed it once, and then twice, and then I filed it in the same place I filed all the things I didn't want to look at too directly, which is in the back of a mental drawer that I now understand I kept too full. In August, I noticed the phone. The change was small. She'd always been relaxed about her phone at home, the kind of person who'd leave it in the kitchen and go be somewhere else for an hour without anxiety. That quality shifted. The phone was on her more. Not dramatically, just consistently. I noticed it the way I notice things I haven't been told to look for, registering it as a data point without yet having a file to put it in. There was one evening in August that I've been thinking about since. She was on the back porch after Emma was in bed, phone in hand, and I came out to ask if she wanted anything. And she looked up, and she was smiling at something on her phone. A real smile, the unguarded kind. And when she saw me, the smile changed into something more neutral, and she said no thanks, and I went back inside. I thought she was just reading something funny. I made a point of not thinking about it further, and I succeeded. September brought the first thing I couldn't fully rationalize. She told me she was having dinner with her friend Kayla on a Friday night. Kayla is a real person, a genuine friend of Holly's, someone she's known for years and seen regularly. I had no reason to question it. Holly left at 7 and came home around 10:30, and she smelled like a restaurant, and she seemed fine, and I was half asleep on the couch, and we went to bed. The following week, Kayla texted our shared home number about something logistical. I don't even remember what. Something about a piece of furniture Holly had offered to lend her, and I texted back that Holly wasn't home, and Kayla wrote back, "No worries. Tell her I said hi. We haven't hung out in forever. We need to fix that. We haven't hung out in forever." I sat with that text for a while. Then I told myself Kayla probably just meant it had been a few weeks and was expressing the usual mild social guilt. I did not ask Holly about it. I filed it in the drawer and closed the drawer. By October, the drawer was getting full in a way that was hard to ignore. The Friday evenings had become a pattern. Not every Friday, but enough of them. Often enough that I'd started associating Friday with Holly having somewhere to be. She gave me different explanations that were all plausible. Kayla, a coworker named Deb, a book club she'd mentioned joining, the general category of just going out for a bit, don't wait up. All of it was the kind of thing that any person in a normal marriage might say, and I was a person in what I believed was a normal marriage, and I kept accepting the explanations because that's what you do when you trust someone. The spiral started in October, and it was quiet, and it was constant, and it went something like this. There's nothing wrong. There's something wrong. There's nothing wrong. There's definitely something wrong. I am a person who reads rooms for a living, and my own house is a room I'm not reading correctly, and I don't know whether that's because nothing is there to read or because I'm deliberately not looking. That second option started to seem more plausible as October went on. I am good at my job because I can be in a situation and read what's actually happening versus what I'm being told is happening. A client says they love a house, and their body says they're trying to convince themselves. A seller says they're not motivated, and their energy says they'll take any reasonable offer. I have spent 12 years learning to trust the reading over the statement. In October, I started to understand that I had been accepting statements over readings in my own home for 4 months. The mundane moment that captures all of it. I was driving back from a showing in the Broadmoor neighborhood on a Wednesday afternoon, taking the long route home on Line Avenue, because I wanted an extra 10 minutes before I had to be anywhere, and I was just driving in the October light thinking about nothing and everything simultaneously. The Spanish moss on the oaks, the particular golden quality of Shreveport in autumn, an ordinary Wednesday drive home. And underneath it, I was running the list of things that had been accumulating since June. The name, the evenings, the phone, Kayla's text, and I was building the case I'd been refusing to build for 4 months. And I thought, if a client showed me these signs in a negotiation, I would know exactly what they meant. I would not need more evidence. I would know. I turned onto Southern Avenue and pulled into the driveway and sat in the car for 5 minutes before I went inside. Emma came running to the door when she heard the car, which she always did, which she had done every single day for 2 years, and I picked her up and she told me about her day, and I carried her into the house, and I put the list back in the drawer. I kept doing that for 2 more weeks. And then last Tuesday, I made pasta with sausage and fennel, and we sat down to dinner, and Emma, who cannot filter anything, asked about the dog. I want to tell the moment of the discovery slowly because it happened slowly, the way the worst things often move, fast in clock time and slow in every other way. The words, "Mommy's friend Tyler has a dog," landed on the dinner table between us, and I looked up and I watched Holly's face do the thing faces do when they are trying very quickly to manage something that has just gotten away from them. A fraction of a second. She was good at managing things. It wasn't quite fast enough. I didn't say anything in front of Emma. I finished dinner. I helped with homework. I did the bath and the story and the lights out that I did on the nights when I was home in time, the routine that Emma and I had built together over 3 years. I tucked her in and she asked me to do the voice for the pig character in the book, which I did. And she was asleep within 10 minutes, because 7-year-olds who have had a full day are reliably unconscious by 8:30. I came downstairs and Holly was in the kitchen. She was cleaning up from dinner, her back to me, and the quality of the cleaning had a particular focused quality, the kind that happens when you're doing something with your hands because you need your hands to be doing something. I sat at the kitchen table. She turned around. She'd been crying a little, or had been close to it. Her eyes were doing the thing they did. "Tyler Reeves," I said. Not a question. She set down what she was holding. "Ben. He's back in Shreveport. You mentioned him in June." "I know. Ben, I was going to." "How long?" She looked at the floor. The window. Back at the floor. "Holly, how long?" "Since July." Quiet. Very quiet. July. A full month after she'd mentioned his name in the casual way you mention a name when it's not supposed to be freighted. The elevated moods after the evening's out. The phone. Kayla's text. July through October. 4 months. Running parallel to the ordinary life of our marriage. Running parallel to Emma asking about dogs, and Holly running the dental office, and me selling houses in Broadmoor. "Is he?" I stopped. "Did you know him before?" "Before us." She looked at the table. "We dated. A long time ago. Before everything. Before everything. Before Chris. Before Emma. Before Shreveport and the dental office and Cross Lake and the house on Southern Avenue. So you have history." "Ben." "That's a yes." "Yes." She sat down across from me. "It was a long time ago. And then he came back and she stopped. Started again. I ran into him. At the market on Uri. And we got coffee and she stopped again. She shook her head. "I know there's nothing I can say that makes that." "Does he know about me?" "About Emma?" "Yes." No hesitation. "Does he know you're married?" "Yes." I looked at the kitchen. The kitchen we'd painted together when we moved in, the specific green she'd chosen and that I'd thought was wrong and then turned out to be exactly right. The dishes Emma had picked out, the ones with the little illustrated animals on the rim. The ordinary physical contents of a life I'd thought I was inside of. "How many times?" I asked it before I decided to ask it. "Ben, I don't think." "How many times, Holly?" "A lot." "So quiet." "The Friday evenings." "Yes. Mostly. The one you told me was Kayla." She closed her eyes. "Yes." I sat with that. Kayla, who hadn't seen Holly in forever. Who needed to fix that. "Do you love him?" She pressed her hands flat on the table. She didn't answer immediately, which was its own answer. "Holly, I don't know what she stopped. "I have feelings that I haven't. I don't know how to tell you what they are when I don't fully know myself." "That's an answer." "I know." She was crying now, steadily, the way she cried when she was not going to stop quickly. "I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't." Are you in love with him? The silence that followed lasted long enough that I understood I was not going to get a clean no. I need you to answer. I don't know. She said it slowly, like a weight being set down. I genuinely don't know. And I know how terrible that is to hear. It's terrible, I said. I know. Emma called him Mommy's friend. I hadn't planned to say that. It came out the way things come out when you stop managing what you're saying. She met him. He was in our house. Holly's face did something I didn't have a word for. When I said, a few times, I didn't plan for her to meet him. He was in our house, Holly. I know. She pressed her hand over her mouth. I know. I know how that sounds. She asked about his dog. My voice did something then that I hadn't expected. I'd been keeping it level the way I always kept things level, and it did something at the end of that sentence that I couldn't control. My 7-year-old daughter told me about his dog. Holly was crying hard now. I stood up. I was not going to cry at the kitchen table in front of her, which is not a noble or healthy instinct, but was the one I had. I need to sleep somewhere else tonight, I said. Ben, I'm going to get a pillow and sleep in my office. I need you to not come in there. Okay. Barely audible. We will talk more when Emma isn't in the house. When she's at school. Okay. I went and got what I needed, and I closed the office door, and I sat on the small couch in there, and I looked at the wall, and I thought about Emma asking about the dog, her complete guilelessness, her total absence of understanding that the sentence she'd said at the dinner table had done what it had done. She'd been trying to open a negotiation about the dog. That was the entire thing. She just wanted a dog. I sat there for a long time. And eventually, because I had to be functional in the morning and Emma needed her routines, and the world keeps going, I slept. I said I'd come back. I'm here. A lot of you commented on the original post, and I read through all of it across several nights. Some of it helped. Some of it was people projecting their own situations onto mine in ways that weren't relevant, which I understand is what happens when strangers respond to something personal. One person commented, "The dog detail is the most devastating thing I've read on this subreddit in a year," and I've thought about that comment more than I should probably admit, because yes, it is, and also Emma still wants the dog, and those two things existing simultaneously is the kind of thing that makes you laugh in the dark at 1 in the morning. Here's what happened. Holly moved to her sister Patrice's house 14 days ago. Patrice lives in Bossier City, about 20 minutes across the river, and she has a spare room and a practical nature, and apparently told Holly she could stay as long as she needed without asking too many questions, which is the right way to handle a thing like that. The house on Southern Avenue is mine and Emma's. That part was straightforward in at least a logistical sense. The mortgage is in my name. I had it before we got married. Holly is on the title now through the marriage, but we both understand, without yet having had the formal legal conversation, that this is where Emma needs to stay for her stability and her school and her routine. Holly has been clear about not wanting to disrupt Emma's life more than it's already being disrupted. I believe her about that. Emma knows something is wrong. She's 7. She knows. She's asked twice why Mommy is at Aunt Patrice's, and both times I've said something about Mommy needing some time to help Patrice with some things, which is a child's version explanation that she's accepted with the particular acceptance of a child who knows she's not getting the full story and has decided that the partial story is enough for now. She asks for Holly every day. Holly calls every evening, and I hand Emma the phone and go into the other room and listen to the sound of them talking from down the hall, and I get through it. What I have not gotten through cleanly is telling people. I told my brother first. His name is Aaron. He's 43. He lives in Dallas and has the specific quality of being the person in a family who tells the truth about things without making it cruel, which is rarer than it sounds. He called me after I texted him the bare outline, and he listened without interrupting, which is harder than it sounds, and at the end he said, "What do you need right now? Today, not eventually." I said I didn't know. He said that was fine, and he drove up the following weekend, and we did things with Emma that kept her busy and happy and tired, and he left on Sunday evening, and I stood in the driveway after his car turned the corner, and the ordinary weight of the situation settled back onto the house. My parents don't know yet. I'm not ready for that conversation, and I've given myself permission to not be ready for it yet. My mother will have strong opinions, and my father will be very quiet, and I don't have the resources for either of those responses right now. Holly's family, her mother lives in Bossier City, near Patrice, found out when Holly told Patrice, and her mother called me once. It was a short call, careful and sad, and she said she loved Emma and that she was sorry, and that whatever happened she hoped I knew she thought of me as family. I told her I knew that, and I meant it. We haven't spoken since, but the call was the right thing, and I'm glad she made it. The unexpected complication, Tyler Reeves. I knew approximately nothing about Tyler beyond what Holly had told me. Old boyfriend, moved back from Houston, back in Shreveport. What I learned, through a mutual acquaintance about 10 days after everything came out, is that Tyler is not the single and unattached person I'd been picturing. He'd been in a long-term relationship, 2 years, a woman named Dana who'd also moved to Shreveport from Houston when he did. And that relationship ended around the same time his involvement with Holly began, and the end of it and the beginning of this were not, apparently, entirely unrelated. I don't know what to do with this information. Part of me wants to find some clean narrative in it, that he was using Holly to fill a gap, that the timing of his reappearance in her life was not coincidence, but strategy, that she was in some sense manipulated by someone who saw her at a vulnerable moment. I've tried that narrative on, and it doesn't fully fit, because Holly is not someone who gets manipulated easily, and the choices she made over 4 months were choices, and I can hold both things. That Tyler may have been calculating, and that Holly was still responsible for her own actions, without one canceling the other. I haven't contacted Tyler. I've thought about it, and I've decided there's nothing there worth the energy. He's 37, has his Houston history and his Dana and his dog that Emma asked about, and what I know about him is enough, and more than enough. Our mutual friends have responded in the usual range. Some have gone quiet, which I understand. Some have been specifically present. Our neighbors Phil and Gwen, who have known Holly and me since we moved in, came over the first Saturday after everything came out with food and a calm, practical energy that didn't require any particular conversation. Phil helped me fix the gutter that had been loose since spring. Gwen sat with Emma and did a puzzle. That was the entire thing, and it was the right thing. My agency has noticed that something is off with me. I've been functional. I've showed up. I've done the work. I've closed 2 transactions in the past 3 weeks because real estate does not pause for personal catastrophe. But my managing broker, a woman named Carol who has known me for 9 years, pulled me aside last week and said, "I don't know what's going on, but I want you to know I'm not tracking your hours right now. Just take the time you need." I didn't ask how she knew. She just knew. The way people who have been watching you for years know when something structural has changed. The inside of it. The first morning I woke up alone in the bed. Holly had already been at Patrice's for 2 days. I lay there in the particular quiet of 6:30 on a weekday, and I ran the first few seconds of ordinary morning. The blank window before memory restores itself, and then memory restored itself, and I lay there and let it. I've been doing this every morning. The window before memory gets shorter some days and longer on others, and there's no pattern to it that I've been able to identify, which is its own small frustration for someone who identifies patterns for a living. I found one of Holly's earrings on the bathroom counter about a week in, a small gold one, the everyday kind she wore constantly, sitting on the edge of the counter near the mirror where she always left things before bed. I picked it up and held it for a moment. The specific weightlessness of a small piece of jewelry, the absurd smallness of it against everything. And then I put it in a small dish on the dresser, and I've been walking past it every day without doing anything with it. I'm aware this is irrational. I'm allowing it. There's a drive I take with Emma sometimes on weekend mornings, out toward 12 Oaks, along the river road. She likes the boats and the pelicans and the particular smell of the river in the morning. We went last Saturday, just the 2 of us, and she was in the back seat talking about something from school, fully absorbed in her own narrative, and I was driving and I thought about how completely she trusted that things were okay, that the people who were supposed to be there were there, that the routine would continue. She didn't ask about Holly on the drive. She asked when we got home, at the kitchen table while she ate her after-drive snack, and I gave her the partial story answer, and she nodded and ate her crackers and went to watch her show. I still buy the coffee she likes. The specific brand she started buying when we moved in together that I'd never had before and that I now prefer. The store brand is right there, and it's half the price, and every week I buy the one she started buying, and I go home and make it, and I think I should switch to the cheaper one. And then I don't. Here is where I actually am. Holly and I have talked 6 times since she moved to Patrice's. 4 of those were about Emma, logistics, schedule, who was handling what. One was a harder conversation, about 10 days in, where she said things about the marriage that I've been thinking about since, about the long hours, about the feeling she'd had in year 2 and year 3 of being well provided for and well managed, but not fully seen, about reaching for me on the evenings when I was home and finding someone whose attention was somewhere else. I listened. I didn't argue. I've been sitting with the question of how much of that account is accurate and how much of it is being offered as explanation for something that doesn't get to be explained, and the honest answer is that both things are real and neither cancels the other. The sixth conversation was 4 days ago. She asked if I would consider couples counseling. Not reconciliation, not a declaration about the future, just a structured space where we could figure out what happened and whether there was anything salvageable in it. She said she knew she didn't have the right to ask for anything, and she asked anyway, which I respect as an approach even in this context. I told her I didn't know yet. That was the honest answer, and I gave it to her. I've started seeing a therapist on my own. Her name is Dr. Lisa Tran. She has an office on Kings Highway, and she has a particular quality that I think is what I need right now, which is that she won't let me stay in the analytical register. Every time I start building a case or running a sequence of events, she redirects me to what I actually felt in the moment, which is different from what I've been telling myself I felt, and the difference is uncomfortable and probably necessary. I've been 3 times. I'm going back next week. Emma asked about the dog again last Thursday. Not in connection to anything. She'd just been thinking about it, the way 7-year-olds circle back to unresolved desires with the consistency of a tracking system. She laid out her argument with genuine care. She was old enough. She would help with the feeding. She knew how to be gentle. The yard was big enough. I listened to the whole thing. I told her we'd talk about it. I've been thinking about the dog more than is probably rational. It started as this thing, the sentence that told me everything. And it has become this other thing, which is a small creature Emma wants, and that would require walking and feeding and a very specific kind of daily presence. And I find myself thinking, maybe that's not the worst idea right now. Maybe something that requires you to show up every day at the same time, that is uncomplicated in its needs and uncomplicated in what it gives back, is exactly the kind of thing that a house that is currently too quiet and too large and too full of things that used to mean something could use. I haven't decided. I'm trying not to make decisions while I'm still in the acute phase of anything. My therapist would agree with that instinct. Emma would not. She was just asking about the dog. That's the thing I keep coming back to. The thing I turn over when I can't sleep and the house is quiet and the earring is sitting in the dish on the dresser. She was just asking about the dog. 7 years old, completely guileless, one hand on her fork and one eye on the pasta. And she said the thing she said because she wanted something small and specific and had found an opening in the conversation to ask for it. She had no idea what she was handing me. She had no idea that the sentence she said at the dinner table was the thing that finally made me look directly at what I'd been not looking at for 4 months. My daughter told me the truth by accident, trying to get a dog. I don't know yet what the marriage becomes from here. I know what it was and I know what it became without me seeing it clearly enough in time. And I know that somewhere between those two things is the question of whether there's a third thing, a rebuilt thing, that neither of us knows the shape of yet. I'm not ready to answer that question. I'm giving myself permission to not be ready. What I know is this. Emma is still asking about the dog. She is going to keep asking about the dog. And I am a person who sold 43 houses last year and who is currently sleeping alone in a 3-bedroom Craftsman with a yard that is, by any reasonable measure, big enough. 3 years of marriage and a pasta dinner and a 7-year-old who just wanted a dog. And I am sitting in the house we chose together trying to figure out what I'm building next. And the only thing I know for certain is that whatever it is, I am not going to build it from a distance this time. Tomorrow, a man comes home from a weekend fishing trip to find a single suitcase missing from the closet. No note, no call, no explanation. And what he finds when he starts making calls will change everything he thought he knew about the last 2 years.